Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Captain Shack here. With me is Morphologist. How you doing, sir?
Hey guys, Morphologis here. Yeah, so we're here today to talk about Rogue One, which hasn't just come out, but we've now both seen it, and we both have our own opinions on the film. I think overall, though, just to begin with, I think we generally liked it. But
You speak for yourself, sir. No,
Right.
I totally dug it. It was awesome. I'm just spoiler alert. It's awesome. And spoiler alert. This whole conversation is going to be nothing but spoilers on top of spoilers. So if you haven't seen Rogue One or Rebels for that matter, because I got a feeling we're going to talk about Rebels a bit, yeah, you're going to want to see those before you listen to this. Just a heads up. There you go.
yeah, absolutely. We can't talk about this and not spoil stuff. So why don't we just jump right into it? One of the things that I picked out about the film is I loved it, first of all, before I continue, because a lot of people, I think, will feel like I'm hating on the film. But I want to be critical of one major thing. I brought my sister with me, who has never seen a Star Wars film before. And you might be thinking, what the heck are you thinking? It's an anthology film. They should know something
so you
about
guys
Star
know
Wars.
we started talking about this first, and then we were like, why don't we record it? Because this conversation is what people have been asking in the comments for days now. So, okay, sorry. Go ahead. I'm laughing about you bringing your sister to see Rogue One as the first Star Wars film.
Yeah, I know. So we wanted to see a movie on Christmas night, and we went to go see Rogue One. And oh man, I was so pumped to go see this film. But anyway, she fell asleep like I would say 15 minutes into the film.
Oh.
It was pretty bad. Well, first of all, she doesn't like science fiction genre, the science fiction genre. But I think what I picked out from kind of seeing it through her eyes is that, you know, in the beginning when we're introduced to the main character Jyn Erso and her father, who is what's Mike Mickelson's character, Galen Erso. We're introduced to these characters much in the same way that we're introduced to Luke Skywalker in A New Hope. And if you look at like where they live, it's not a desert planet, but they like live in the ground, and they also have like moisture farms going. So there's like a definite connection or a parallel to Luke Skywalker with these characters. But the thing is that this part of the film is so short that we really don't get to know Jyn Erso or her family that well. And for that matter, because of that, we don't get really emotionally invested in the character itself. And so I felt, at least for somebody who's never seen the film before, as looking at Rogue One as just a film, the character development I felt was a bit weak. And that came into huge play later in the film, which we're going to get to in a second.
We'll talk about, as we get through it. So your issue was, and I've heard this quite a bit, is I couldn't get attached to the characters, I couldn't get into the characters, or it's just not all of them, especially the main character, because maybe the intro is too short, or we didn't get a chance to really get to know them. Now that I've seen it, and I didn't want to talk about this movie right after seeing it, because I needed some time to like digest it, because there's quite a bit there.
I want to rewatch it because there is so much to it, and I think you were pointing out stuff in the film that you had seen. Go ahead, you say it.
Hang on, my cat just walked in and started screaming at me, so we'll have to edit this part.
Your cat walked in screaming.
Sorry. Okay.
It's okay.
What were you saying?
All right. So no, and you said there was so much in this movie, but you also pointed something out that I didn't even notice, and now I feel like so stupid for not noticing it. We're both really into the Star Wars Rebels series, which, by the way, if you haven't seen before, guys, you guys gotta check it out. It's probably, I think it's way better than Clone Wars.
There's so many fantastic nods in Rebels,
and it's
from
a little
that
bit
series.
And just to speak a little bit, to sidetrack a bit, like it's definitely more of I would say it's like a young audience can watch it, but there's more mature elements in it, like a backdrop that you can understand.
It's a lot like the Clone Wars series for anybody who's seen that. Like a lot of people said, "Oh, I don't like it because it's gone back to like this kid's storyline." It's exactly like how the Clone Wars series kind of fell into place. The very first few episodes were, kind of kids episodes, Monster of the Week, or defeat the whatever this week, and eventually they broke into real stories about the characters, and you started getting darker themes and actually dealing with some more heavy stuff. And Rebels is kind of the same way, but they get to it a lot faster, and it gets a lot more interesting as you get into like the middle of season 1. But yeah, like there's. Well, you're a huge fan of the Rebels series. I've been reading a lot of the new lore books. I've gotten some of the comics recently and had gone through those right before seeing Rogue One. And this is definitely one of those movies that if you're a fan of the bigger universe, it gets you excited. Like you see so much stuff.
Point out for me what you saw in Rogue One, because I didn't see it myself, and
Okay.
now I feel super stupid.
Okay, so there was a moment where they were panning out from Yavin, and in the background is the Rebels ship, the Ghost from the show Rebels. It's actually sitting there landed, and me and Tabby were like, oh, we like tapped each other on the shoulders, like, hey, look, it's that. And then not soon after that, they had an intercom speaker kick on where they were like running around in the hangars. And you hear, it was like, General Syndulla, please report to wherever. And that would be the pilot of the Ghost, the main character from Rebels. But, wait, what is this? So many years in the future, she's now a general. She's leading a big portion of the rebellion. You get this, in that moment where they had this, 3 words over that loudspeaker, I had a whole plot going on in my head of like, what's happened since the Rebels TV show and Rogue One? And she's a general now? What happened to the rest of the crew? And just that kind of like that nod. There's also a scene with Chopper, though I missed that one. But somebody said that you can actually see Chopper running around, which is the droid from Rebels if you don't know the cast. But.
Yeah.
So
I can see myself getting this movie now and like going through it scene by scene and trying to pick out like little tidbits of it from Rebels or other of the Star Wars universe. And of course they had R2D2 and
C-3PO made their little cameo appearance where they had to like shove him in there. And you've seen him so many. I didn't even blink when I saw it. It's like we've seen them so many times in every movie, in Rebels, in the Clone Wars. It's like you guys are just everywhere. It's not even like that big of a deal anymore to me to even see them when they're in something like this. But let's go back. Let's go back and talk about what you brought up at first, because it is like the big issue with the movie that people have, which is the not getting attached to the character, right? Especially with the ending the way it is. You have to have that attachment to make it work.
Indeed, but you made a fair point, and this is an ensemble cast, and
yeah,
I mean
like
that is fair. But again, I would still make the argument that there could be a way, or maybe it just comes down to the shooting or the scripting or something for you to become more emotionally invested in the characters.
Well, let me explain my stance so the audience gets it, because I know we just had this conversation. Yeah. But so you brought it up. You're like, oh, her character isn't very developed. Like her specifically, she's the main character. You just don't have that attachment. We need to know more about her. What are her motivations? Why is she doing this? And my point was, if you look at almost any ensemble film, you have, as soon as they introduce her, they go right into introducing the rest of the cast. The Rebel intelligence officer has the next scene, and he's got, for how short his scene is, like a really great moment where he shoots that informant in the back because there's no way that informant's getting away. Like he does some dirty stuff, and you figure out who he is real quick. You're introduced to all these characters, some better than others. Definitely, like K2 could use a hell of a lot more character. I didn't feel as much for him. He had some really funny lines, but
oh yeah, he had some great lines. I particularly liked him in this film. I wish we'd see more of him for sure.
Oh, I know, it was so sad. So at the end of this movie, we all know, if you've watched it, hopefully you have, the cast dies. Everybody that they've introduced is dead, because that's how it had to end to lead right into A New Hope. So to make that work, you have to feel for them. And like K2's death was like, oh, you died like such a badass, but I really wanted more of you. Like Alan Tudyk, the guy of Wash from Firefly, is voicing him, and he's got that dry humor. It's just, there were so many things I could have done with you. Good. And it was he has the best lines in the movie, other than maybe the Force, not really like a Force wielder sort of, but not a Jedi. The Guardian. I can't think of his name.
I'm looking. Donnie Yen's character, Chirrut Imwe. That's who you're talking about. Yeah.
He has, he's probably the character that everybody just loves immediately. Mm-hmm. And honestly, he doesn't have that much of a build-up, but there's just so much background there. He was one of the Guardians. He builds out the idea of the Force being within everyone and doesn't have to be a Jedi to use it. What was your favorite character out of the cast?
Oh, it's so hard to say, but I think I would say that there are hints that all of these characters are really interesting and they have like a depth to them, but we don't really explore it. Like I think you pointed out Donnie Yen characters, Chirrut Imwe, and his companion, what's his name? Who has the big guns?
What was his name? I don't remember his name. Yeah, he's like the guy with the big backpack with a giant gun. Baze Malbus is the Force wielder's buddy with the giant cannon and the backpack and the armor. And those two's relationship is probably, I felt more for them than the main character.
They did it. I think Jiang Wen did an amazing job giving the character Blaise Melbus a lot of like emotion and connection to Donnie Yen's character, Sharut's character, Imwe's character, because this is a huge spoiler alert. Everybody dies, as you know, but the order matters. So Sharut Imwe dies, and then Blaise runs up to him and like they have this conversation, and it's really emotional. Like, we don't know much about these characters, but we know that they have like a really strong connection, like a brotherhood, and they were protectors of the sacred temple on Jeddah.
Crystals.
Yeah, the
Kyber
Kyber
crystals.
crystals.
The Kyber crystals, yeah.
Yeah. And so it's like this really powerful scene. I really want to know more about these characters. It's hard for me to say any specific character in this film is my favorite, going back to your original question, because we're so unable to connect emotionally with any individual one. I would say, and this is, copping out here, broadly, I want to know more about all of the characters. I would not mind a spin-off of any of them. I think it'd be great.
I mean, you could totally, I would love to see, like what their history is with defending these crystals. I mean, because they've hinted, even in I'm going to go back to Rebels real quick, with the Kyber crystals. Like, one of the first things they do in the first season of Rebels, spoilers, is they take out an Imperial transport transporting Kyber crystals. And when they detonate the transport, it goes off with an explosion that looks like the Death Star firing, basically, that big green electric glow. And it all ties in. They're probably transporting it from this planet that these guys were defending. It's I don't know. I love the bigger scope of this movie, because that's something that episode the last Star Wars proper movie, episode 7, didn't really have, right? I think me and you both were complaining about, like, who are these people? Why is there another rebellion going on? And this movie has like the total opposite problem. It is the bigger scale of things is all wrapped up in this. But anyways, going back to the characters.
But I think, actually, I do want to touch more on this point, because you pointed something out, like it felt kind of like in episode 7 that we didn't get to know enough about the background. But remember that in that film as well, Disney said we need to cut back. And I feel like in both cases, both with episode 7 and especially Rogue One, there was too much of a hand in the pot from Disney trying to say, we've got to shorten it. It can't be this violent. It has to be PG-13 and so on and so forth. We'll get more into this later, but I feel like it played a
Disney,
huge role.
Like, walked in and changed, like, the reason that the trailer scenes don't match anything that happened in the movie? Is that what you're saying? Like, it's because Disney kind of came in and just rewrote everything?
Not rewrote necessarily. I know for certain that I saw an article, and I'll have to try to find it. I can't reference it right now offhand, but I read an article a few months ago about Rogue One shooting that they had to reshoot like 70% or some astronomically huge number of principal photography. They had gotten done with it. Disney had reviewed it, and they had said, no, it's too violent. It's not going to get the PG-13 rating that they need, which is, what all Star Wars movies are, so that they can appeal to a wider audience. See, the director of Rogue One wanted to be more like a war film, so much more violent, much more dark, nothing like the space opera of the trilogy films when they're shot. So I feel like his creative vision must have been stifled or something, because it felt like there was something missing, or there was an idea that was there that wasn't fully fleshed out. And I hate to say it, I believe that the script was also leaked at some point, and we found out that Blaise character, who we were just speaking about, was an Imperial informant, and Donnie Yen's Sharut Imwe's character finds out at some point in the film, but that never happens in the film. Well,
maybe it was. I mean, the leak could have been faked too.
It could have been faked too.
Because
yeah.
I can't agree that like it feels like something's majorly missing. I mean, the story just works.
It does. It's an overall story.
Mm-hmm. It works, and it bolsters. That's the best thing I think about this movie, is that it bolsters A New Hope. Mm-hmm. I had days of just like thinking about the scenes in this. And it's like, wow, this solves the most hilarious joke of A New Hope, right? The exhaust port.
Yeah,
the whole exhaust port thing. Like, this is literally a plot based on the joke that everybody makes of why would they ever build something that large, that doomsday device that has an off button that explodes. Kind of makes some hilarious issues for the newest Star Wars, the newest of the main trilogy, episode 7, because it's like, hey, it's the same thing again, but hey, this doesn't have a plot wrapped around it. Yeah, so I don't know. I just think that's funny. But, I mean, I think it works great. I don't feel like there's anything missing other than maybe I'd like to see the extended cut with more scenes of the characters.
Yes, absolutely.
They would really flesh it out. Now, something that I'm curious what your reaction to this is. So we were talking about how the movie ends. And everybody dies because the Death Star shoots shoots the base and takes out the guy who created it, which I love that kind of twist of the story. He gets blown up by his own ambitions. The most emotional scene in the movie for me was definitely not like the destruction of the main cast in that beautiful scene on the beach, which was shot really well. It was the Rebel fleet showing up, and then those random dudes getting blown out of the sky, and then having like, you know, Vader's ship show up and it stops the command ship, and like you knew it was going to happen. You knew that something had to happen to make A New Hope, you know, start off with Leia running with the blockade runner, but just watching the rebels show up in that big heroic moment and then watching them get picked off to eventually be out, like just wiped out. Like that was my most emotional moment. I was like, oh no, the rebel pilots. What was yours?
No, I agree. That was my most emotional moment, and this is why, going back to the first part of the video, which I'll get into in a second, I was like, there's not enough emotional investment. Like the one of the characters that dies is an X-Wing pilot, is a more elderly gentleman. I believe that's the character played by Ian McKellen, General Dodonna, I believe. Is that him? Yeah, he's in. If you don't know, he was in Game of Thrones as the king, or the leader of the knights. Leader of the Royal Guard in that show. He dies in the film, of course, and he tries to save everybody, but he gets blown up, and that was an emotional scene. I actually didn't realize that was him until I looked at the cast, but you see him earlier in the film speaking with some of the other main characters, some of the higher echelons of the rebellion, like when they're talking with Mon Mothma. He's in there, and everyone's having this conversation. So you know he's a big guy, and he dies later. So there is, like, for some reason, you feel like more emotional when these guys come to try to save Rogue One and die anyway. So yeah, I agree. And then also when the Rebel fleet jumps in to back up Rogue One, because initially Rogue One goes rogue, and that's why they're called Rogue One. That's the whole name of the movie. And the rebels don't agree with what they're doing, so they follow them in eventually to back them up, because they say, all right, well, maybe the plans for this Death Star really are on Scarif. And that was a really powerful scene. That whole last bit of the movie, I would say, is perfect. Absolutely perfect.
It brings the rebellion together, and we get to see more of the rebels. Like, it's not just the good guys, you know, they're the clean good guys that never get their hands dirty. Then they're breaking apart. The Rebel Alliance is done, and then that's the moment where everything comes together. The Rebel fleet shows up. Like, if I find that, okay, so the characters may not be as built out as we would want, but it builds out, I guess, the factions.
It does,
and
yeah.
As a huge fan of Star Wars, like that, they meant more to me, almost than the cast, really. The Rebel Alliance falling apart and then coming back together, rallying around Rogue One, which eventually becomes, you know, Rogue Squadron, and that's where the Rogue title comes from and why it's so important. Like, I love that universe building, and this movie does it so much better than, well, any of the past ones we've had for quite some time.
If you look at the characters themselves, yeah, not a lot of development, but I think you pointed at something great out here. It develops the factions, because on the Rebel side, we get to see that they're not this clean, shiny rebellion. They've done some really nasty stuff. Like at the beginning of the movie, where one of the Diego Luna, who plays Cassian Andor, kills one of the informants, just like after saying, "Hey, no, it'll be all right," and then he just kills him. Like right there, and runs away. Like, what? This is not a Han Solo character.
Like, I can't. There's no way I can climb out of here. What have you done? And he's just like, you're right. You can't. I can. He shoots him in the back and runs.
He shoots him in the back. Yeah, and
like, oh man,
these guys are not good. And actually, if you, again, another big, this is all spoilers. He's supposed to kill Cassian Andor. Is supposed to kill Jyn Erso's father when they go to save him, quote unquote, save him from the Imperials, because he wants to defect.
He's the guy he's the only guy who can finish the Death Star, the super weapon. They don't know what the super weapon is at this point. Yeah. And so you get that kind of character. I'm curious what you think. Now, I've sat here and I've thought about this for quite a bit. I want to see the movie again, because there's some themes in it that I didn't quite get my head around till like maybe the day after I had watched it. If the movie has a theme to it, what do you think that big theme or lesson is? Like,
oh, yeah, that's hard to say. I mean, I was so overwhelmed by the euphoria of seeing a Star Wars movie with like the original trilogy sort of era. I guess I was too distracted to really see some of the big picture stuff, like what the theme is, but I guess it was still very war movie like. So in that way, the director was able to accomplish it in some sense.
Yeah, like if you're talking about a genre, and I hope they do this. We'll get back to the theme in just a second. But I like talking about the genre. So you're like, oh, it's very war movie like, and we both said, this was fun. This was a really good Star Wars movie that built out the universe, and we want to see more. I'd love to see more genres. I'd love to see the Boba Fett like almost sci-fi western-esque genre of a bounty hunter, good, the bad, the ugly style. Like that got my brain thinking about like all the kinds of movies that they could do in the Star Wars universe to flesh out the universe even more and do other genres. Like, I don't know. I love, like, that's the one that always pops in my head. I want a Western of Boba Fett, like, bounty hunting. I don't know how that would work, but let's do it.
or even, remember the what's it called? The Falling Star or Two Stars book. I'm pretty sure it's still canon, but we explore Lost Stars. We explore the idea that everybody on the Imperial side isn't evil. And that
an Imperial-focused movie.
Yeah. It's an Imperial-focused movie. I think that when there's a defector in the movie who's a really interesting character who just abruptly dies. It's an Imperial defecting pilot who essentially is the person who brings the information to Jyn Erso to say your father wants to give you this information about the Death Star so that you can destroy it. He's an interesting character. I would like to know more about the humanity and the regret that some Imperials might feel for what their empire is doing to people. That is a really interesting bit from Falling Stars that I would love to see.
Like a movie of Falling Stars would be great. You get that kind of Romeo, Juliet, almost wartime romance story would be something that we haven't really seen before. I'd like to see that.
And they've already tied it into Battlefront. So if you've played Battlefront before on... What's the planet where the super Star Destroyer is falling? It's with a J.
Oh my goodness, the desert one. The other desert planet. I'm gonna look it up now because I don't remember.
I don't remember either. Jakku,
the planet of Jakku with all the wreckage all over in Episode 7. Right.
Right. So if you play Battlefront, the newer game. In the Battle of Jakku, if you're standing on the ground, you see a super Star Destroyer falling from orbit and crashing into the planet. That's from the book Falling Stars. There's a big fight going on the main. I won't ruin it for you, but it's a really good book. You guys should read it.
Yeah,
it ties
just stop
into
right there.
The book.
We could spoil Rebels and everything else, but we can't spoil that book. It ties around. It ties really well. It does. It is canon. You were wondering if it is. It is totally canon. It was one of the first books that they came out. Under the Disney. This is canon for sure. Yeah, it's good. It's probably my favorite Star Wars book. No, it is my favorite Star Wars book. But let's go back. Let's go back and talk about the theme. So we were talking about, like, I was sitting down and I'm thinking, okay, what were the major scenes of the movie? Kind of what was the vibe? And I'd have to say, I need to watch it again with this idea in mind. But the idea that, the idea of trust, right, is just the theme of the entire movie. Almost every scene they do that has almost any type of character development has trust at its core. So everything from, let me give you a couple of examples. Everything from the main character not trusting the Rebel Alliance when she first gets rescued. Congratulations, you're being rescued. That great line with
K2SO,
yeah, K2SO like drops her on the ground, and then their relationship builds with trust. She even says, rebellions are built on hope. She has that moment with the Imperial intelligence officer with the pistol, talking about trust goes both ways. There's moments with the Rebel Alliance. They don't trust in the information. They don't trust her and what she says about her father. And if the data is there, and that like leap of faith and that leap of trust is what brings the Alliance back together. The two of our favorite characters, which I am so failing at character names right now.
There's so many characters. Don't feel too bad. We just saw this movie. There's a lot of characters in the movie. It's a big ensemble cast. I'm sure as we go on, everybody's going to become more and more familiar with these characters. Because they probably will have lore behind them in the future. We'll probably find more about who they are.
Imwe and his buddy, right?
Yeah,
like, as long
and
as
his buddy Blaze. Yeah,
those two, like, I don't have to worry about anything because I've got you watching my back. He says that. I see the blind guys just walk it off. It's that great moment. And then when he's doing his chant, what does he say over and over and over again?
The force is me. I am with.
he fully it's the forces. The forces. Whatever his chant is. Now I'm totally failing at my Star Wars knowledge.
He says it over and over again. Yeah, It's a little bit funny. He seems like the hopeless Jedi wannabe, but he's damned good. Like he's totally legit. He could be a Jedi, I feel.
He's sitting there like, the Force is with me, I am one with the Force, or whatever he says over and over. But his absolute trust in the Force allows him to, go through all that gunfire and hit the switch, right? The big moment that if you don't do this thing, everything's for naught, and he dies doing it, but not until he's completed his task. So once they finally like fully trust each other, everything comes together and the mission's accomplished. So I guess that would be, I want to see it again now. That's like the biggest reason I want to see it for a second time, is like, is this just in my head? Is just this like a theory that I've been running with, or was this like a planned thing?
No, I think you're right. They say, I just realized, I remember back to the script, they say hope several times, about hope being important for the rebellion. And there's a turning point in the movie where the rebellion's meeting together, or actually it's called the Alliance in the movie. It kind of explores why they're called the Alliance and not the rebellion yet. But they're having this conversation about, okay, maybe we just need to give up. They've got this super powerful weapon. We can't possibly win. And Jin comes in with a really powerful speech out of the blue and kind of motivates everybody to, sorry, we got to do this, like we've got to have hope. So I think the theme of the movie has to be having hope despite incredible odds against you, like absolute, in a time where there should be no hope whatsoever because of how powerful and oppressive your enemy is. So I guess maybe that's that must be the, what? I don't know.
I like the theme, like the hope theme. It kind of works. I just feel like that would be the theme of the next movie in the line, right? A New
Hope, yeah.
And that's that. Like what you just describes far better that like into the there's no hope. There has to be some hope. Rebellions are built on hope. Boom, A New Hope. That's the beginning of the series.
That was clever. Yeah, clever tie-in.
See what they did there.
No, I like it. There's a lot of clever tie-ins. Like if we re-examine it, I'm sure we're going to find like tons and tons of them. The script writers were, I'm sure, very, very thorough and very clever with every chosen word and title. So
me and Tabby have already said, like, as soon as we can get this on Blu-ray, it's going to be, we're watching Rogue One, we're going right into A New Hope, because they're what, maybe 15 minutes between each other? However long it took them to come out of hyperspace, and boom, you're in A New Hope.
Yeah, exactly. And great scene with Darth Vader.
Yes.
We're reaching the end of the movie now.
Okay, so we're reaching the end of the movie. I wanted to, I want your opinion though before you ask me any questions about it. Vader.
All right, Vader.
Was it necessary to even have him in the movie?
I believe it was absolutely. I wanted to see more of him, and this is purely from a fan standpoint because we have not seen Darth Vader in his prime, like where he just. Why is he so scary? Why does everybody fear him? Aside from the fact that he looks dark and ominous, what has he actually done? And we get to see that in this film. He just absolutely destroys the rebels, walking through their ship, killing them one by one in vicious ways.
When that lightsaber cuts on in the dark, you can't even see him. You just see it. It's just oh shit's going down. Are they gonna cut to black like the second he walks forward? Is that what they're gonna do? And I thought they were gonna do.
Me too. I was like, oh please don't.
You get just brutal. He's throwing people on the ceiling. He's cutting dudes in half. Like it's just, yeah. The look on that rebel who's sitting at the door, man, just so good. That guy right there. He made that scene work.
Like, if you wanted to watch A New Hope starting with the tail end of Rogue One, you could, and it would make perfect sense.
It would flow right into it.
Right, it would flow right into it, and Darth Vader would seem a lot scarier walking through the door of the blockade runner to find the stolen data tapes.
It's so good. But honestly, though, now they had some great scenes with him, but when you watch the trailers, I was thinking this was going to be kind of Vader-centric. Like, he is in an absurd amount of the trailer, and a lot of those scenes were not in the movie. There's a great scene with like this big screen that shows this real red background, and you can tell it's like the Death Stars, some type of overlay of the Death Star, and it's like real fuzzy, and you got Vader just standing in front of it, so you see his silhouette. That wasn't in the movie. That was never there. And I was thinking about it while watching the movie. I was like, wow, there's a lot of shit not here. The TIE fighter popping up when Urso is on top of the communications tower. Like, you're waiting for it.
That didn't happen.
It didn't happen. You're like, where? Okay, here comes the TIE. That was a really cool scene. How does she get us? Did she shoot him in the head? With a pistol? And it never happens.
Right. I feel like there was definitely a lot of reshooting, a lot of editing. The 70% or some ridiculous number probably played a huge role in it. I think for sure that Darth Vader was supposed to be in more of the movie. I would have liked to see him in more of the movie, but maybe, just maybe, they'll have another anthology film where Darth Vader comes in and kicks some serious ass. And I'd love to see that.
A Darth Vader. They did do, and I just finished reading it, there's a graphic novel that kind of follows Darth Vader after the destruction of the first Death Star. So, A New Hope just ends and you go right into it from there, in how he has fallen from grace. Like, he is one of the two only survivors of the command staff on the Death Star. So you're taking the blame for this. Everybody else is dead, and you kind of have that, like, other people that the Emperor. Yeah, it's. I don't know if they did. It was a book first, and then they turned it into a graphic novel for the new lore.
Well, I read the book. I know what book you're talking about. I have it.
Okay. So yeah, like it's that whole idea of, like, the Emperor isn't sold on you being his right hand if one of these other options works out, and he's all these other, like, other apprentices, sort of, that he's got working on. It's cool. It's a really neat storyline where it continues. You kind of see how brutal this guy is. But anyways, what were we talking about before you totally distracted me? Vader?
No, we were talking about Darth Vader, but I think now we're talking about classic characters, and I think there's two other characters we should mention that are in the film, surprisingly, that took me way off guard. Grand Moff Tarkin, and at the very end, we get to see Princess Leia. And obviously, unfortunately, the actor who had played the original Grand Moff Tarkin had passed away in the 90s. I forget exactly which year he passed away, but it was a while ago, so they didn't have him. So they had to use CG, and they got an actor by the name of Guy Henry who could do his voice very well, and I think it was pretty dang near spot on. At times, I felt like the CG was a little strange, and you could tell it was CG, but damn, they're getting almost absolutely perfect with it. For what it was pretty good, and I enjoyed seeing Grand Moff Tarkin in it, and I think he needed to be in it. He would have played a role as he was. Well, we got to find out essentially how he came into control of the Death Star versus the main bad guy of the movie, who was the Admiral. What's his name? Orson Krennic. He played Admiral Krennic. Yeah.
Good name too.
Admiral Krennic is originally the guy who heads off the project with Jyn Erso's father, and so he wants to take control of the project, but he's kind of failing pretty hardcore because the rebels now know where the plans are. So Grand Moff Tarkin takes over.
Yeah, once he's taken out by his own weapon, Tarkin just walks in, which Tarkin was never going to let him control that thing to begin with. Like, I had no problem with them leaving Krennic alive. I thought they might, just one more new Imperial bad guy to introduce. But, because, Tarkin's never going to let you control this thing. He's obviously going to control it afterwards. He's always been kind of the Emperor and Anakin's kind of favorite if you watch the Clone Wars series. But getting back to that CG, the first time I saw it, it was, for me at least, super uncanny valley. Like, just that awkward feeling, like looking at somebody and knowing that it's just not quite right.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, it's so cool to see Tarkin, but as the movie went on, I don't know if it was me getting more comfortable with seeing Tarkin in that CG state, or if it had just gotten better as they went through production. Because I know when they showed Leia, I was like, nope. That's just weird. It looks freaky. I wish they would have found somebody that just looked like her and just played it off that way. There's no reason to go that hardcore into it. Because what do you think of Leia?
I didn't think Leia was that bad because she didn't move. There was something weird going on with the size of her forehead, I felt, but it wasn't bad. I mean, they actually have the actress to play Princess Leia, so they probably just put a young face on it.
See, I'm pretty sure that was a body double with the face swap thing. I don't know. That was the one that threw me off. Like, it was cool to see her and just, like, see this is moments before A New Hope. So I was kind of overwhelmed by that fact. It's like what we're seeing is right before one of my favorite movies starts. But, God, I could not get over that CG for her. Tarkin was totally passable for me. And later on, there are some moments where he, like, turns toward the camera and he says one of the lines from A New Hope. I don't remember what it was. It was like, "Fire when ready," or something like that. And that's when I was like, yes, that's Tarkin. That gave me a little bit of chills. It's like, I'm watching something that I haven't seen for the first time since I was a little kid. And just got that giddy.
Yeah, it was great. And since we're on the point of CG, the CG of seeing the Death Star fire on both Jeddah and Scarif was phenomenal. It was amazingly good. I really enjoyed both those scenes, and we also got to know more about how the Death Star works, and that it doesn't just necessarily destroy planets, but it can also act as like an orbital bombardment weapon that does insane damage.
You want to just shave off a continent? It totally has that feature.
Yeah.
Though I will say, when they shoot it at the ancient city and you see that wall of ground like flooding toward them, what part of me was like, this is just epic to watch. Like, it is spectacle at its finest. And part of me was just laughing at this idea that the ground was moving so slowly towards them. I know it's an idea of scale. It's not moving slowly. It's just the scale is huge. But
I mean,
don't
to
know.
be fair, they did kind of like really draw that out, right? They dragged it out, and then when they get in,
building, and we're gonna run through the desert, and we're gonna run onto the ship, and we're gonna take some moments to pause and look at the spectacle. And
by the way, that U-wing that they escape in is a beautiful new ship. I'm glad it's in the series. It looks great, and if you've played Battlefront, it's in the game now, of course, and it's fun to fly. So I like it.
I'm gonna have to check it out. Does it have the drop doors and the door gun? Doesn't it have like a door gun on it they showed?
Oh, I think you're mistaking EA for another game company. No, it doesn't. It's just the ship hull. But it's great. It looks like the wings fold out, and it just looks great flying. There's the in Battlefront, it plays out like I think how the movie was supposed to play out. Like, you start off in space, you go in through the gate, then you get down to the surface, and then you've got to like blow up some of the Imperial ships to get their attention, and then you have to escape with the stolen data tapes. But it doesn't play out exactly like it does in the movie. I think, one, so it doesn't ruin the movie for people, and two, because they changed the script a lot. So
I'm picking up pictures of the what are they calling it? The U-wing now?
The U-wing, yeah, it's called the U-wing. It's awesome. Looks great.
It does fill that role. We were talking about this when I did that Space Engineers community video just recently. It's like, why didn't you use the U-wing instead of a LAT? I used an Old Republic LAT or New Republic LAT. And yeah, it is really cool. It is an X-wing dropship.
Yeah,
like,
it's an X-wing drop. That's exactly what it is. They use X-wing engines, and it's got like an X-wing canopy, but it has like a huge bay underneath for transporting
big
troops.
Belly. It looks freaking cool. And they got that little, I don't know what race he's supposed to be, sitting there as the door gunner, like firing down at AT-AT kneecaps, I guess. He was busting kneecaps with the thing in the movie.
Yeah, that was so cool. Yeah,
that was
great.
Epic. Oh, that's so good. But they're not just AT-ATs. They're like a different version with these weird drop panels on the
that's
sides.
an excellent point. If you guys like lore, there's a lot of like background lore in just the ships that they use. So they show you more types of AT-ATs, like cargo transport AT-ATs. They also show a TIE Defender, which you've not seen before in films. Which are also
showed the TIE Defender in that? I don't remember that.
They have like a special type of TIE Defender. It has maybe it's not called the TIE Defender, but it doesn't have the vertical shields. It has two 45-degree angled shields with a long pill-like body. That's I believe
yeah. I'm looking at it now. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah, oh man, there's so much. I need to see it again. Remember, we've only seen it once. I gotta go see it again though. There's just so much cool stuff.
Oh, I don't think it was the Defender. It was another type of TIE ship. I'll have to look it up. But there's like hundreds of TIE variants or something ridiculous. I remember seeing a lore episode on it, a lore video on it on YouTube. But yeah, they've got some cool lore stuff in there as well. So if you wanted to check that out, and you can really spend a lot of time examining Rogue One for like these little bits and pieces, which I'm sure we will.
Oh, you know it. That beach battle. I mean, the battle scenes in this were just over the top. I loved it. I loved every minute of it. Watching the rebels fight off the Imperials as they're like charging down those I don't know, train station ways that they had. Very cool.
Oh yeah, and I think that the film does a great job of capturing the architecture of Imperial buildings and gives you the feeling that it is in the universe that we see A New Hope in, which is really cool.
Didn't have enough sheer cliffs.
Didn't have enough sheer cliffs, but it had the absurd interior architecture of like sheer drops with no railings, verticality. Lots of like vertical windows with vertical lights. It was really cool.
That's how you get promoted in the Empire. You wait until your boss falls off one of these sheer cliffs because he spilled his coffee that morning, and boom, there you go. Now you're staff sergeant.
Indeed.
All right, guys. Well, I think that's our Rogue One. What are your final thoughts about the movie?
Final thoughts are again, like I said, wish there was more character development, but overall, I would give it an amazing out of amazing for Star Wars. If you're a Star Wars fan, you're going to absolutely love Rogue One.
Definitely. I would give it 4.5 TIE Fighters out of 5. If we're going to throw some random rating scale on here. It was good. It was really good. I hope we see more genres. That's all I'm saying, guy. Disney. I'm saying, give me that Western, Good, Bad, and the Ugly Boba Fett movie. I'm not asking for much. I'm just asking for
the Imperial
everything.
Falling Stars movie. I would love to see that as well.
Yes, and we highly recommend that book if you guys haven't seen it. All right, guys, if you enjoyed this conversation about Rogue One, hit the thumbs up button, subscribe to my channel or Morphologis' channel. I'll put a link in the description below.
As will I.
Thank you, sir, to your own channel. What a jerk. You could put my link in there. We will see you guys in the next video.
I'm just going to put a link to my own video in it. Yeah, see you guys in the next chapter.
Everybody.
Later.